Good afternoon / morning, everybody. It is Steve Lookner with Agenda Free TV. That is not the speaker vote. That's not the speaker vote. But you are looking at the U.S. House, where soon they will vote on the new speaker. So again, this is not the speaker vote right here. But we are watching the U.S. House live, and the question is, will Speaker Johnson keep his job? He needs to get almost all the Republicans to vote for him. So we do not know if House Speaker Johnson will keep his job as Speaker. He really can only lose one vote, and he can't lose more than one vote, and there's already one Republican that says he won't vote for him, Thomas Massie. So we're here to find out, will the Republicans choose Speaker Johnson as their speaker to stay as speaker, or will they choose somebody else? We'll find out soon. Well, it might take a while, but they're supposed to have their first vote soon. So we're going to bring you live coverage of this. Take your comments and questions on the air. At Lookner is where you can reach me. Again, this is not the vote right now, but the vote is supposed to be soon. So thank you for being with us, and we're going to give you some background on what's going on here. But it's the new Congress, and the House needs to choose their first speaker basically before they do anything else. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Hey, thanks to Rachel, our new member. And thanks to our moderators. We have Roberts Mayqueen. RJ is moderating, thank you. Beth Mythical. We also have... one moment here. Linda Belk and Larry on X. Over there on Twitch. I Got That Fire, Papa Bear and Surly Dev. And thanks Tander62 for resubscribing on Twitch. Thank you. We also have our Facebook moderators. Thanks for moderating over there. Kay Lowry Body, Margaret Riley, thank you. I appreciate it. So again, you are looking live at the U.S. House. We are bringing you live coverage. Soon they will vote on Speaker. Why is it... Hold on a second here. Let me look at this. I know the audio is a little... This is the Reuters feed. If I have to, I can switch feeds. But I'd rather not switch feeds for now. Let me just to do it, I'm going to do something else here. Just to do it. Give me 2 seconds here. Let me do something real quick. Just getting a backup here, just in case. I don't think we'll need a backup feed, but just in case we need it. No, that seems to be fine now. This one right there. There you go. What is that? Why is this like this? Oopsie, that's what I need to do. Again, this is not the vote. The vote is coming up. Oh, I think we have an update here. I think I have an update for you. Give me a moment here. There's a news update I'm seeing on what's going on with the vote. Speaker Johnson just posted too. We'll have to talk about that. Speaker Johnson just posted on social media. We'll talk about that too. So, according to, well, I don't want to get too far into that. But Speaker Johnson just posted like a big post. He's trying to stay as speaker. He just posted a big post on his X account. See right there. It's a whole thing. I'm not going to read the whole thing right now. American people have demanded an end to the status quo and to return to fiscal sanity. As a speaker, I commit to create a working group comprised of independent experts not corrupted by lobbyists and special interests to work with DOJ and our committees on implementing recommended government and spending reforms to protect the American taxpayer. Task that working group with reviewing existing audits of federal... I'm not going to read the whole thing here. But I assume he is doing this to try to shore up support. Fiscal responsibility. So remember, Speaker Johnson basically can only lose the support of one Republican in Congress, in the House. There's already one Republican, Thomas Massie, who says he's not going to vote for Speaker Johnson. So if one other Republican says they're going to vote against Speaker Johnson, then he won't have enough votes. If he doesn't have enough votes, then the House has to keep voting until they can elect somebody else as Speaker. So the Republicans, if they're going to conduct any House business, they have to pick somebody to be Speaker. But they have such a small majority that assuming you get no Democratic votes for somebody, they can only lose one vote. Only one Republican can vote against the person. Rising Sun says, remember last time 15 rounds it took? I don't think it was last time, but that was, McCarthy in, I think, 2023 took a lot of rounds to be elected. I'll give you some background on this. Yeah, there were 15 ballots, 15 votes in 2023 before Kevin McCarthy got elected Speaker. That was just 2 years ago. Thank you to PZ Papa Zulu for the gift memberships and Hendershot for being a member. There's another question. A big question is Chip Roy. Chip Roy, who is a Republican, I believe, from Texas. Yes. There's a question as, will he support Speaker Johnson, Chip Roy? So there's certain people that are being focused on as, will they support Speaker Johnson? You can see real quick here, I'll give you some background. Speaker Mike Johnson is trying to save his job as a new Congress intervenes. Convenes. The new Congress, says AP, has opened with one major task at hand, the election of the House Speaker. They basically can't do anything else until they elect a House Speaker in the House. Newly elected lawmakers are in place at the U.S. Capitol, but the current Speaker, Mike Johnson's weak grip on the gavel, threatens not only his own survival, but President-elect Trump's ambitious agenda of tax cuts and mass deportations as Republicans sweep to power in Washington. If Johnson, if they don't elect a speaker, then they can't proceed with House business like certifying the election on January 6th. Trump has backed Speaker Johnson. The House must first elect its Speaker to proceed to business. It took 15 rounds, AP reminds us, to elect Kevin McCarthy as Speaker in 2023. Texas GOP Representative Chip Roy is among the most notable holdouts so far. He is an unflinching member of the Freedom Caucus who lashed into Republican leadership's handling of the year-end spending bill for failing to cut spending and adhere to House rules. Roy posted on social media, "Something must change." He said he remains undecided on whether to support Speaker Johnson. The one hard no is Thomas Massie of Kentucky. But other far-right Republicans, including some who helped topple McCarthy, have kept their views close. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries has said that Democrats will not vote to save Johnson. Democrats will not vote for Johnson. This vote, what's on your screen that's a quorum call, I believe. It's not. They have not started voting yet on Johnson. Our viewer, Cage Dalton, says 2023 was a humiliation ritual for Kevin McCarthy. All right, let me try to actually get you some updates if I have any breaking updates here. This is called a quorum call right now. I believe that there's supposed to be 219 Republicans and 215 Democrats. According to the Washington Post, Georgia Democrat Hank Johnson has not shown up yet. But that's the one person. It's supposed to be 219 to 215 today. That's how many people are expected. Give me one moment here.
Are there additional representatives-elect in the chamber who wish to record their presence? If not, all time has expired. 433 representatives-elect have recorded their presence.
There's a missing
quorum
Democrat.
is present.
There's a missing
Credentials,
Democrat.
regular and form, have been received showing the election of the Honorable Pablo Jose Hernandez Rivera as resident commissioner from the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico for a term of 4 years beginning January 3rd, 2025. The Honorable Eleanor Holmes Norton as delegate from the District of Columbia. The Honorable James C. Moylan as delegate from Guam. The Honorable Stacey E. Plaskett as delegate from the Virgin Islands.
So what happened, according to Andrew Solander, what happened is one Democrat, Hank Johnson, marked himself, didn't mark himself present. So I believe that gives an extra vote of leeway to to Johnson right now.
Of the state of Florida, indicating that he will not serve in the House in the 119th Congress.
Talking about Matt Gaetz right now. They just mentioned Matt Gaetz.
Without objection, the letters relating to his resignation will be printed in the record. Pursuant to law and precedent, the next order of business is the election of the Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 119th Congress. Nominations are now in order. The clerk recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McLean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and thank you, colleagues. Mr. Clerk, as the chair of the Republican Conference, I am directed by the vote of that conference to present for election to the office of the Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 119th Congress the name of the Honorable Mike Johnson, a representative from the state of Louisiana. Welcome, everybody. I am optimistic about our future. On November 5th, the American people gave us a great opportunity to get America back on the right track. They gave us an opportunity to get back to normal and to get back to the real issues that the country faces right now. People want the opportunity to take care of their families. They simply want to provide for their children and give them a prosperous future. And ladies and gentlemen, we have the opportunity today to do just that. We have an opportunity to take our country back. With Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, and President Donald J. Trump in charge, we have the opportunity to put America first again. We have an opportunity to do something about crime. We have an opportunity to do something about the border. And we have an opportunity to take care of our veterans. We, and every single member in this chamber, and those of you watching at home and on TV, should be looking forward, knowing that America will be respected again. Our country is the last bastion of hope. If we fail, then who? This is why we are focused on the issues that the majority of Americans care about: God, family, country, faith, freedom, and traditional American values. And we should be making it easier for people to achieve the American dream. Over 14 months ago, Mike Johnson took on a daunting task. No speaker is perfect, and no one will ever be. However, achieving perfection requires incremental gains and hard decisions along the way. None of us will get exactly what we want. The fundamental collective goal of this body is to make progress for the American people in which we represent. And we have done just that under Mike's leadership. We should be celebrating and building upon his efforts, our efforts. Mike has remained the same kind and caring person as he was before he assumed this role. He's an honest broker. He shows you his true beliefs at face value. He is steadfast in his values of faith, family, and love of this country. He knows our brightest days are still ahead of us, and I do too. I am hopeful for the next Congress. I am optimistic that we will focus on those issues that people truly care about. I know Mike will be an integral part of this country's comeback. He will lead us through another successful Republican majority. As chairwoman of the Unified House Republican Conference, I can say proudly that we are ready to govern. It is my honor to present our conference's nominee for the Speaker of the People's House, the Honorable Mike Johnson from the state of Louisiana.
By the way, Democrat Hank Johnson did show up for the vote. Democrat Hank Johnson did show up for the vote.
The clerk now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Speaker Johnson can only have one Republican vote against him, and there's already one that's saying he's going to vote against him, Thomas Massie. So Speaker Johnson can't lose any other Republicans.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I've had a little bit of practice, and clearly my colleagues took notice. I rise to place a name in nomination, but first, I want to acknowledge my colleague from Michigan for her heartfelt and personal nominating speech. As someone who's given a few of these, I can say you served your conference well, Representative McLean. But, Mr. Clerk, today I rise on behalf of the governing majority of the House of Representatives. The American people have sent a strong message that they want their elected leaders working together to tackle the affordability crisis. There is only one leader in this chamber with a track record of compromise, conviction, and compassion. There is only one leader who understands the needs of the working people and has lived the American dream himself and is committed to ensuring its promise for future generations. There is only one leader who knows how to negotiate a bipartisan deal and then stick to that deal. House Democrats are united behind the most powerful legislative leader in this chamber, Hakeem Jeffries of Brooklyn. House Democrats, under the leadership of Hakeem Jeffries, are committed to bipartisanship and common sense solutions to America's most pressing challenges. In the face of chaos and dysfunction over the last 2 years, our caucus has kept the government funded, kept our allies protected, and the economy secured from the catastrophic default. In the 119th Congress, we will work with the incoming administration to make life better, safer, and more affordable for working families. And the incoming administration must also recognize that while my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are divided, and while compromise remains a dirty word for so many, Congress won't be able to keep the lights on, let alone pass anything of substance, without the buy-in and blessing of House Democrats and Hakeem Jeffries. Make no mistake, Democrats want to bring down the cost of living, build more housing, and lower the cost of everyday items like food, medicine, and childcare. Even as the extreme rhetoric rises in this chamber and in the public square, we will not stop advocating for the policies that do the most good for the most people. Because of Hakeem's leadership, we will never abandon our values or sacrifice our bedrock principles of freedom and democracy. When America's enemies abroad threatened our democratic ally, Ukraine, when terrorists attacked our strongest ally, Israel, it was Hakeem Jeffries and House Democrats who delivered the votes and stood tall for America's national security. When the least, the lost, and the left behind were threatened with devastating cuts, Hakeem Jeffries stood with America's mothers, children, and veterans. When the incoming administration wanted to raise the debt limit by trillions of dollars in order to finance tax cuts for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected, leaving middle-class families to pay for the bill and leaving them high and dry, Hakeem Jeffries didn't just say no, he said, that's why there is only one true candidate today for Speaker. So, Mr. Clerk, I am honored to rise today at the direction of the House Democratic Caucus to place into nomination for election to the position of Speaker of the House of Representatives, the pride of Brooklyn, the gentleman from New York, Hakeem Jeffries.
The names of the Honorable Mike Johnson, a representative-elect from the state of Louisiana, and the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, a representative-elect from the state of New York, have been placed in nomination. Are there further nominations? There being no further nominations, the clerk appoints the following tellers. The gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Fox. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Morelli. The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Stile. And the gentlewoman from California, Mrs. Torres. The tellers will come forward and take their seats at the desk in front of the Speaker's rostrum.
They're going to vote soon. Now, Jeffries won't get elected because Jeffries doesn't have a majority. The Republicans will ultimately elect who they want, assuming Democrats, assuming there's no compromise candidate that gets votes from both sides. But again, there are 219 Republicans there and 215 Democrats. The one seat missing is Matt Gaetz' seat because Matt Gaetz resigned his seat. So assuming no Democrats go for Johnson. Johnson needs 218 Republican votes if everybody votes. And he already, and so he can only lose one Republican. And we know that Thomas Massie, who's a Republican, already said he's not voting for Johnson. So if any other Republican votes against Johnson, he won't have enough votes to win. Now they could vote on this many times, but we're soon going to have the first vote on Speaker. And the only two candidates are Johnson and Hakeem Jeffries, who is the Democratic nominated candidate, but he's not going to win. Mama Yoli thinks it'll take 3 votes. You could have some Republicans who decide, I'm going to vote against Johnson for 1 or 2 votes, and then I'll vote for him on the 3rd vote or something, I don't know. And Trump has endorsed Speaker Johnson. According to the Washington Post, over the weekend, according to the Washington Post, about half a dozen Republicans remained undecided. But that was as of earlier today. But the House cannot conduct other business. They have to elect a speaker. If there's no speaker, the House can't even certify the presidential vote on January 6th.
The roll now will be called, and those responding to their names will indicate by surname the nominee of their choosing. The reading clerk will now call the roll.
They're voting now. They're voting now.
Adams.
This is the vote.
Jeffries. Adderholt. Johnson. Aguilar. Jeffries. Alford. Johnson. Allen. Johnson. Amo. Jeffries. Amode of Nevada. Johnson. Ansari. Jeffries. Arrington. Johnson. Auchincloss. Jeffries. Babin. Johnson. Bacon. Johnson. Baird. Johnson. Balderson. Johnson.
Will there be any surprises?
Balance.
We'll see.
Jeffries. Barr. Johnson. Barragan. Jeffries. Barrett. Barrett. Baumgartner. Barrett Johnson. Barrett. Johnson. Baumgartner. Johnson. Bean of Florida. Johnson. Beatty. Jeffries. Begich. Johnson. Bell. Jeffries. Bentz. Johnson. Barra. Jeffries. Bergman. Johnson. Beyer. Jeffries. Bice. Johnson. Biggs of Arizona. Biggs of Arizona.
He's seen as a question mark. He is seen as a question mark, Biggs. No vote yet for him.
Biggs of South Carolina.
President Trump's endorsed candidate, Mike
Johnson.
Johnson.
Bilirakis. Johnson. Bishop. Jeffries. Boebert. Johnson. Bonamici. Jeffries. Bost. Johnson. Boyle of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. Burkeen. Johnson. Bresnahan. Johnson. Brown. Jeffries. Brownlee. Jeffries. Buchanan. Johnson. Budzinski. Jeffries. Burchett. Johnson. Burleson. Johnson. Bynum. Jeffries. Calvert. Johnson. Kamek. Johnson. Carbajal. Jeffries. Carey. Johnson. Carson. Carson. Carter of Georgia.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Carter of Louisiana. Jeffries. Carter of Texas. Johnson. Kassar. Jeffries. Case. Jeffries. Caston. Jeffries. Castor of Florida. Jeffries. Castro of Texas. Jeffries. Shifferless McCormick. Jeffries. Chu. Jeffries. Ciscomani. Johnson. Cisneros. Jeffries. Clark of Massachusetts. Jeffries. Clark of New York. Jeffries. Cleaver. Jeffries. Klein. Johnson. Cloud. Cloud.
Cloud was seen as a potential question mark, too.
Clyburn. Jeffries. Clyde.
Clyde was a question mark, too.
Clyde.
3 Republican question marks have not voted.
Cohen. Jeffries. Cole. Johnson. Collins. Johnson. Comer. Johnson. Conaway. Jeffries. Connolly. Jeffries. Correa. Jeffries.
I'm going to interrupt to give a little context here. The big question is, will
Costa.
Speaker Johnson have enough votes? Speaker Johnson can only
Jeffries.
lose 1 Republican
Courtney.
vote. Massey is going to vote
Jeffries.
against Johnson. He's a Republican.
Craig.
There have been 3 other Republicans who didn't vote.
Jeffries.
Biggs, Cloud,
Crane.
and Clyde. So if one of Biggs,
Johnson.
Cloud, or Clyde votes
Crank.
no, then Johnson won't have
Johnson.
enough votes.
Crawford. Johnson. Crenshaw. Johnson. Crockett. Jeffries. Crow. Jeffries. Cuellar. Jeffries. Davids of Kansas. Jeffries. Davidson.
And to be clear, as one
Johnson.
of our viewers pointed out,
Davis of Illinois.
some Republicans could just not vote,
Jeffries.
and that could change the math. You need a
Davis of North
majority of
Carolina.
votes of people who have voted.
Jeffries. Dean of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. DeGette. Jeffries. De La Cruz. Johnson. DeLauro. Jeffries. Del Bene. Jeffries. DeLuzio. Jeffries. DeSaulnier. Jeffries. Desjardins. Johnson. Dexter. Jeffries. Diaz-Balart. Johnson. Dingle. Jeffries. Doggett. Jeffries. Donalds. Johnson. Downing. Johnson. Dunn of Florida. Johnson. Edwards. Johnson. Elfreth. Jeffries. Elzie. Johnson. Emmer. Johnson. Escobar. Jeffries. Espaillat. Jeffries. Estes. Johnson. Evans of Colorado. Johnson. Evans of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. Ezell. Johnson. Fallon. Johnson. Fedorchak. Johnson. Feenstra. Johnson. Fields. Jeffries. Figures. Jeffries. Finstad. Johnson. Fishbach. Johnson. Fitzgerald. Johnson. Fitzpatrick. Johnson. Fleischman. Johnson. Fletcher. Jeffries. Flood. Johnson. Fung. Johnson. Foster. Jeffries. Fushi. Jeffries. Fox. Johnson. Lois Frankel. Jeffries. Scott Franklin. Johnson. Friedman. Jeffries. Frost. Jeffries. Fry. Johnson. Fulcher. Johnson. Garamendi. Jeffries. Garbarino. Johnson. Garcia of California. Jeffries. Garcia of Illinois. Jeffries. Garcia of Texas. Jeffries. Gill of Texas. Johnson. Gillen. Jeffries. Jimenez. Johnson. Golden of Maine. Jeffries. Goldman of New York. Jeffries. Goldman of Texas. Johnson. Gomez. Jeffries. Tony Gonzalez. Johnson. Vicente Gonzalez. Jeffries. Gooden. Johnson. Goodlander. Jeffries. Gosar. Gosar. Gottheimer. Jeffries. Graves. Johnson. Gray. Jeffries. Green of Tennessee. Johnson. Green of Texas.
And still our rise for the preferred candidate of liberty and justice for all, the hope and dream of the enslaved.
The gentleman may respond by surname.
Green of Texas. Jeffries. Green of Georgia.
Four
Johnson.
Republicans have not voted yet
Griffith.
when their name was called.
Johnson. Grijalva. Jeffries. Grothman. Johnson. Guest. Johnson. Guthrie. Johnson. Hageman. Johnson. Hamadeh of Arizona. Johnson. Harder of California. Jeffries. Herodopoulos. Johnson. Harrigan. Johnson. Harris of Maryland. Harris of Maryland.
That's the fifth Republican who's not voted yet.
Harris of North Carolina.
They could eventually vote, but five
Johnson.
Republicans have been silent so far.
Harshbarger. Johnson. Hayes. Jeffries. Hearn of Oklahoma. Johnson. Higgins of Louisiana. Johnson. Hill of Arkansas. Johnson. Himes. Jeffries. Henson. Johnson. Horsford. Jeffries. Houchin. Johnson. Houlihan. Jeffries. Hoyer. Jeffries. Hoyle of Oregon. Jeffries.
To be clear,
Hudson.
Speaker Johnson can only lose one Republican. Massey, who's not
Huffman.
voted yet, says he's going to vote against
Jeffries.
Johnson. That's one. But there are
Huizenga.
5 other Republicans so far who have
Johnson.
not voted. They could vote at the end. But Speaker
Johnson.
Johnson cannot lose more than one Republican. So if
Hurd
one of
of
those 5
Colorado.
decides to oppose Johnson, that'll be too many
Johnson.
Republicans opposing Johnson, and he
Issa.
won't get elected on this vote.
Johnson. Ivy. Jeffries. Jack. Johnson. Jackson of Illinois. Jeffries. Jackson of Texas. Johnson. Jacobs. Jeffries. James. Johnson. Jayapal. Jeffries. 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 Johnson of Georgia. Jeffries. Johnson of Louisiana. Johnson. Johnson of South Dakota. Johnson. Johnson of Texas. Jeffries. Jordan. Johnson. Joyce of Ohio. Johnson. Joyce of Pennsylvania. Johnson. Kim Lagerdove. Jeffries. Captor. Jeffries. Kane. Johnson. Keating. Jeffries. Kelly of Illinois. Jeffries. Kelly of Mississippi. Johnson. Kelly of Pennsylvania. Johnson. Kennedy of New York. Jeffries. Kennedy of Utah. Johnson. Kana. Jeffries. Kiggins of Virginia. Johnson. Kiley of California. Johnson. Kim. Johnson. Not. Johnson. Krishnamurthy. Jeffries. Kustoff. Johnson. LaHood. Johnson. LaLota. Johnson. LaMalfa. Johnson. Landsman. Jeffries. Langworthy. Johnson. Larson of Washington. Jeffries. Larson of Connecticut. Jeffries. Latimer. Jeffries. Latta. Johnson. Lawler.
The Honorable Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Lee of Florida. Johnson. Lee of Nevada. Jeffries. Lee of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. Ledger Fernandez. Jeffries. Letlow. Johnson. Levin. Jeffries. Liccardo. Jeffries. Liu. Jeffries. Lofgren. Jeffries. Loudermilk. Johnson. Lucas. Johnson. Luna. Johnson. Luttrell. Johnson. Lynch. Jeffries. Mace. Johnson. McKenzie. Johnson. Magaziner. Jeffries. Maliotakis. Johnson. Malloy. Johnson. Mann. Johnson. Mannion. Jeffries. Massey. Emmer.
That was Massey voting for a different member, which was expected. So Massey, Republican, did not vote for
Mast.
Johnson.
Johnson. Matsui. Jeffries. McBath. Jeffries. McBride. Jeffries. McCall. Johnson. McLean. Johnson. McLean Delaney. Jeffries. McClellan. Jeffries. McClintock. Johnson. McCullum. Jeffries. McCormick. Johnson. McDonald Rivet. Jeffries. McDowell. Johnson. McGarvey. Jeffries. McGovern. Jeffries. McGuire. Johnson. McIver. Jeffries. Meeks. Jeffries. Menendez. Jeffries. Mang. Jeffries. Messmer. Johnson. Muser. Johnson. Mfume. Jeffries. Miller of Illinois. Johnson. Miller of Ohio. Johnson. Miller of West Virginia. Johnson. Miller Meeks. Johnson. Mills. Johnson. Min. Jeffries. Molinar. Johnson. Moore of Alabama. Johnson. Moore of North Carolina. Johnson. Moore of Utah. Johnson. Moore of Wisconsin. Jeffries. Moore of West Virginia. Johnson. Moran. Johnson. Morelli. Jeffries. Morrison. Jeffries. Moskowitz. Moskowitz. Jeffries. Moulton. Jeffries. Mervan. Jeffries. Mullen. Jeffries. Murphy. Johnson. Nadler. Jeffries. Neal. Jeffries. Nagoose. Jeffries. Nails. Johnson. Newhouse. Johnson. Norcross. Jeffries. Norman. Jordan.
Wow, that's it. Norman voted for Jordan. Johnson's going to lose. Johnson can't win. Norman just voted for Jim Jordan. So two
None of
Republicans have
Iowa.
voted against Johnson.
Johnson. Obernolte. Johnson. Ocasio-Cortez. Jeffries. Ogles. Johnson. Olszewski. Jeffries. Omar. Jeffries. Onder. Johnson. Owens. Johnson. Pallone. Jeffries. Palmer. Palmer. Johnson. Panetta. Jeffries. Pappas. Jeffries. Pelosi. Jeffries. Perez.
Again,
Perry.
breaking news. Two Republicans voted against Johnson. They voted for somebody else, so Johnson
Peters.
will not
Jeffries.
have,
Pedersen.
if I'm getting this right,
Jeffries. Pfluger.
yes, Johnson will not have enough votes on this vote
Indri.
to get elected speaker. He's going to have to wait for another vote. They'll have another election, another
Okay.
vote sometime after this, but
Jeffries.
Johnson is not going to win on this ballot.
Poe. Jeffries. Presley. Presley. Jeffries. Quigley. Jeffries. Ramirez. Jeffries. Randall. Jeffries. Raskin. Jeffries. Reschenthaler. Johnson. Riley of New York. Jeffries. Rivas. Jeffries. Rogers of Alabama. Johnson. Rogers of Kentucky. Johnson. Rose. Johnson. Ross. Jeffries. Rouser. Johnson. Roy. Roy. Ruiz. Jeffries. Ruley. Johnson. Rutherford. Johnson. Ryan. Jeffries. Salazar. Johnson. Salinas. Jeffries. Sanchez. Sanchez. Jeffries. Scalise. Johnson. Scanlon. Jeffries. Schakowsky. Jeffries. Schmidt. Johnson. Schneider. Jeffries. Skolton. Jeffries. Schreier. Jeffries. Schweikert. Johnson. Austin Scott. Johnson. David Scott. Jeffries. Scott of Virginia. Jeffries. Self. Donalds. Sessions.
We just had another vote
Sewell.
not for Johnson.
Jeffries. Sherman.
Keith Self
Jeff-
voted for Byron Donalds. He's a Republican. Both of
Sherrill.
them. So 3 Republicans have voted
Jeffries.
against Johnson for somebody else.
Shreve. Johnson. Simon. Simon. Jeffries. Simpson. Simpson. Johnson. Smith of Missouri. Johnson. Smith of Nebraska. Johnson. Smith of New Jersey. Johnson. Smith of Washington. Jeffries. Smucker. Johnson. Sorensen. Jeffries. Soto. Jeffries. Sparts. Sparts. Johnson. Stansbury. Jeffries. Stanton. Jeffries. Stauber. Johnson. Stefanik. Johnson. Style. Johnson. Stubbe. Johnson. Stevens. Jeffries. Strickland.
Again, 3 Republicans have voted for other people, not Johnson.
Jeffries.
So Johnson will not have
Strong.
enough votes to win on this ballot.
Johnson. Stutzman.
I think it's 6 Republicans have,
Johnson.
have not
Subramanian.
voted at all.
Jeffries. Suozzi. Jeffries. Swalwell. Jeffries. Sykes. Jeffries. Takano. Jeffries. Taylor. Johnson. Tenney. Johnson. Tanadar. Jeffries. Thompson of California. Jeffries. Thompson of Mississippi. Jeffries. Thompson of Pennsylvania. Johnson. Tiffany. Johnson. Timmons. Johnson. Titus. Jeffries. Tlaib. Jeffries. Takuda. Jeffries. Tonko. Jeffries. Torres of California. Jeffries. Torres of New York. Jeffries. Trahan. Jeffries. Tran. Jeffries. Turner of Ohio. Johnson. Turner of Texas. Jeffries. Underwood. Jeffries. Valadeo. Johnson. Van Drew. Johnson. Van Dyne. Johnson. Van Orden. Johnson. Vargas. Jeffries. Vasquez. Jeffries. Vesey. Jeffries. Velasquez. Jeffries. Vindman. Jeffries. Wagner. Johnson. Wahlberg. Johnson. Waltz. Waltz. Herman Schultz. Jeffries. Waters.
Waltz didn't vote either, Republican.
Jeffries. Coleman. Jeffries. Weber of Texas. Johnson. Webster of Florida. Johnson.
7
Westerman.
Republicans, I think, have not voted and will
Johnson.
be called on again.
Whitesides. Jeffries. Weed. Johnson. Williams of Georgia. Jeffries. Williams of Texas. Johnson. Wilson of Florida. Jeffries. Wilson, Carolina. Johnson. Whitman. Johnson. Womack. Johnson. Yackham. Johnson. Zinke. Johnson.
For what purpose does Virgin Island recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a parliamentary inquiry. I note that the names of the representatives from the Americas, Samoa, Guam, Northern Mariana, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and the District of Columbia are called, representing collectively 4 million Americans. Mr. Speaker, collectively the largest per capita of veterans in this country.
Does the gentlelady have a parliamentary inquiry?
I asked why they were not called. Have some respect. It's not going to take that long.
Gentlelady is recognized.
I asked why they were not called from the parliamentarian, please.
Delegates-elect and the resident commissioner-elect are not qualified to vote. Representatives-elect are the only individuals qualified to vote in the election of a speaker. As provided in Section 36 of the House Rules and Manual, the speaker is elected by a majority of the members-elect voting by surname.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This body and this nation has a territories and a colonies problem. What was supposed to be temporary has now effectively become permanent. We must do something about this problem.
The gentlelady is no longer recognized. House will be in order.
That was the Virgin Islands delegate. That was the Virgin Islands delegate, Stacy Plaskett from the U.S.
The
Virgin
reading
Islands.
clerk will now call the names of the representatives-elect who did not answer the first call of the roll.
Biggs of Arizona. Johnson.
They're calling on the Republicans who didn't vote the first time.
Carson. Jeffries.
Oh, I think Carson was
Cloud.
a Democrat.
Johnson.
I think Carson was a Democrat who missed the vote the first time.
Clyde. Clyde.
Clyde is a Republican. So Clyde looks like it's not voting. No vote from Clyde.
Gosar.
Gosar also no vote.
Gosar.
Gosar and Clyde skipped.
Harris of Maryland. Johnson. Roy. Johnson.
Roy did vote for Johnson. It wasn't clear what he was going to do. You need
Waltz.
217. Hold on.
Johnson.
Did he get it? Hold on. He might have. Did he get it because two people didn't vote? Is that what happened? Is he have a majority because two people didn't show up? Is that what happened?
If there are any representatives-elect who did not answer the call of the roll, they may come to the well and vote at this time.
There's two people who haven't voted. Because there's 432 total who have voted, and you need 217, right? And I think he has
Clyde.
217. No, he doesn't have 217.
Clyde.
He has 250.
Gosar. Johnson.
No, he has. Gosar hasn't voted. Three have voted against him, so he has, and one has not voted. So he has 215 votes.
Clyde.
He has 215
Johnson.
votes, so he doesn't have enough. I'm confused as how many people have voted. If everybody votes, you need 218. Did everybody vote? Clyde and Gosar both ended up voting for Johnson. If everybody votes, there are 434 votes, so you need 218. There are 434 votes if everybody votes. And you need 218 as a majority of that. And he doesn't have 218 because three people voted against him. Or did somebody change their vote? Andrew Solander says Johnson has 217. But again, if everybody votes who's supposed to vote, you need 218. And I know there were 3 votes against him: Self, Norman, and Massey. Yes. So, as Haley Talbot from CNN says, the 7 Republicans who didn't vote initially all voted for Johnson. So, I believe it's 216. I believe Johnson has 216, but you need 218. Because everybody voted. That's my understanding. Yes. Johnson has 216. There are 3 others, and Jeffries has 215. And because 434 people voted, you need 218 as a majority. So he does. So this vote, nobody wins this vote. Nobody has a majority. Nobody has 218 of the 434, which is a majority. Because 217 would be half of 434, which is not a majority. With 434 people voting, you need 218. Nobody has that. Johnson has 216. Jeffries has 215. And there were 3 Republicans who voted for other people. That is the current vote. That is it. Again, 434 votes. You would need 218 of 434 for majority. Johnson has 216. That is the vote. And unless something, they haven't called an end to the vote yet, but that's where it is right now. Again, they have not closed the vote officially, but where it stands right now is Johnson is 2 votes short because 3 Republicans voted for other people. You can see on the screen, Johnson has 216. He would need 218 given that 434 people voted. Now, The House will keep voting until they get a speaker. It's possible that on the next vote, one or more of those 3 Republicans who voted for somebody besides Johnson will vote for Johnson. Or maybe they just won't show up. If those 3 Republicans who voted for somebody besides Johnson just don't vote at all, then you'd have 216 to 215, and that's a majority. But right now, you don't have a majority for Johnson. Everybody voted who's supposed to vote. The one member, there are 435 members normally, but Matt Gaetz is not present because Matt Gaetz has announced he is resigning from Congress. So that's how you get 434. By the way, a quick thank you. I owe a thanks to Captain Jerry Donnelly, Kieran Wilson for your support, Bebop and Rocksteady, Ivan DeGreat, Kieran Wilson for the gift memberships, thank you too. Scott Gimble, Janet Burnett, Ariel Rao Fogel, Channel Ariel, thanks so much for your support. Connor Garrity, thank you. Michael McIsaac, Jasper's Mom Forever, Aries, EMS, thank you. And Graybeard Games, thanks for your support on Twitch as well. I'm checking for updates here, but as far as I'm aware, nothing has changed. Okay, so Scott Wong, who's a reporter with NBC News, Scott Wong reports that Speaker Johnson is trying to flip Norman and Self. Massey pretty dug in. So Scott Wong is saying that Massey's not going to change his vote. He's a Republican. He's going to vote against Johnson. But right now, Scott Wong says Johnson is trying to flip the other 2 Republicans, Norman and Self, who voted against him. So again, this vote is not officially over. If Norman and Self changed their votes, that could change things. If Norman and Self said, I'm voting for Johnson now, and changed their vote, then Johnson would have 218, and that would be enough. Now, there's no guarantee that those 3 Republicans will ever change their vote. You might think, okay, well, even if he doesn't get elected on this vote, he'll get elected on the next one or the third one. You might be right. But if those 3 Republicans stick to their guns and say, we're going to keep voting for somebody besides Johnson, he can never get elected speaker because Democrats aren't going to support Johnson. So we'll see what happens here. They have not gavelled this vote to a close. Hey, thanks to David Bozick. I appreciate it. Also, Nick Rose. Nick says, unless those 3 people keep voting the same way. I have no idea. MAGA since 1492. No, the Virgin Islands doesn't have a vote. The representative from the Virgin Islands basically got up and complained about that. Speaker Johnson, I'm watching on TV. He is walking out of the... Is he walking out of the chamber, Speaker Johnson? Now, I don't even know what they knew. Did Speaker Johnson know that besides Massey, that Norman and Self were going to vote for other people? Speaker Johnson just left the chamber, by the way. So, you know, did Speaker Johnson, was he thinking, I got this? I don't know. You definitely heard in the chamber when those votes came against Johnson by Republicans, you did hear this kind of surprised, like, chatter in the chamber there. Massey voted for Tom Emmer, Norman voted for Jim Jordan, and I think Self voted for Byron Donalds. And Veronica W., our viewer, says Trump must be on the phone. Remember, the House can't do anything else until they elect a speaker. I don't even think they can swear in their new members until they elect a speaker. That is the thing they have to do before anything else. So they will just they could go for days, but they need to do this first. The House can't even certify the election if they don't have a speaker. Sussy Most McSussface, our viewer, says no hurry. Hey, thanks Kazmira Flanagan, who says Trump will be making some calls. Thank you, David Bozick, again. Again, this vote has not been gavelled to a close. Haley Talbot from CNN reports that moderates are getting really frustrated, calling this all ridiculous. Oh, guys, Mika Solner from Punchbowl News reports that according to a whip notice, the House is expected to go into a second vote immediately. Is that going to happen? So, yes, Jake Sherman from Punchbowl says the same thing. The House will move immediately into a second vote. So, what might happen here is that they announce, that's it, the vote's over, nobody wins. Okay, second vote, let's go. So we might have another vote right after this one. So the three members were Massey, Norman, and Self. Keith Self from Pennsylvania? No, I'm sorry, from Texas. Keith Self is from Texas, representative from Texas. Keith Self yesterday posted on X, the last Congress was out of control when it came to spending. He says, I invite the new members to join the few of us who are working on behalf of the American people to stop the big spenders. That's what Keith Self posted on social media yesterday. And I think the other one is Ralph Norman from South Carolina, if I have that right. Thomas Massey, about an hour ago, posted on his social media, "I am a hell no on re-electing Mike Johnson to serve as Speaker of the House. President Trump's agenda needs to become law. Speaker Johnson has already demonstrated he is not the man who can get that done." Matt Fuller with Notus Reports, I think it is, says that Nancy Mace, Republican, just led Ralph Norman, who voted against Johnson, Andy Biggs, and Johnson aide Hogan Gidley into the Republican cloakroom. Oh, Donald Trump did not. Donald Trump did not post about. Did not post about this vote yet. Trump did endorse Speaker Johnson. So again, on this first vote, Johnson needs 218. That would be a majority. He has 216 because 3 Republicans voted against him. On this first vote, unless somebody switches their vote, nobody wins. Because 3 Republicans, Ralph Norman, Keith Self, and Thomas Massie, voted for other people besides Johnson. And everybody voted. So, what happens now? They have to keep voting until they get a speaker. There are reports from Punchbowl News that Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News is saying that, and CNN is saying this too, there are multiple reports that a second speaker vote will happen right after this one ends. This one is not officially over. So we're waiting around to see what happens. I'm checking for other updates here. The Washington Post says various Republicans have walked up to Thomas Massie, Ralph Norman, and Keith Self to temperature check how they'll vote on the next ballot. So the 3 Republicans who voted against Johnson, was this just, well, Thomas Massie says he's not voting for him. So I don't expect Thomas Massie to change his vote. I don't think. But if everybody votes, Johnson can only lose 1 Republican. So assuming that Thomas Massie keeps voting against Johnson, will Ralph Norman and Keith Self keep voting against Johnson? Now, something else that could happen, right, is just because a Republican voted for Johnson on the first vote doesn't mean that Republican will do it on the next vote. There were some Republicans who were seen as being on the fence. So maybe one of them who voted yes this time will vote no next time. Again, the House cannot conduct business at all until it elects a speaker. Give me one moment here. They still have not officially ended this vote. Will there be another vote right after this? ET, our viewer, says, what a massive waste of time. Thank you to NJ Prepper for your support. Who says, NJ Prepper, our viewer, says Congress has a 15 to 20% approval rating across parties. Thank you to Captain Jerry Donnelly as well. Captain Jerry Donnelly says the U.S. Speaker and House is third in line for the presidency. It goes Vice President and then Speaker, correct? In the line of succession. Vice President and then Speaker. Again, Johnson would need 218 votes on this vote. He has 216. You need a majority of the people voting. Army Vet says they are leaving this vote open a long time. Christopher Reed says Poly Market has Johnson at 95%. That's a betting site. Yeah, he basically is at 95.5%. Mike Johnson. I mean, look, the thinking was that going into today, the thinking was that he is definitely the most likely person to get elected. But maybe it could take a lot of votes. But you don't know for sure. You don't know for sure. Because, to repeat, if everybody votes, Johnson can only lose one Republican. And one Republican, Massey, has already said, I'm not voting for Johnson. So he can't lose any other Republicans. Ben Feller says Thomas Massey is that guy. Liz Brown Kaiser with CNN says that Republican Tim Burchett on CNN said Speaker Johnson is meeting with Ralph Norman and Keith Self, who voted against him. And Tim Burchett said there's an issue with the Freedom Caucus. The House Freedom Caucus wants to see Congressman Chip Roy as chair of the House Rules Committee, which I don't know all the details, but I've heard that would be quite controversial. So, but again, CNN, apparently Tim Burchett, Republican, told CNN that right now Speaker Johnson is meeting with 2 Republicans who voted against him, Self and Norman. The Washington Post said in an article today, if Johnson cannot get the necessary votes on the first ballot, the House immediately starts voting again. The House will vote on numerous ballots until a speaker is elected or Johnson decides to delay the vote till Saturday so he can continue negotiating with the holdouts through Friday night. Then the voting process begins again. So that is a possibility. There's a possibility here that this doesn't even get done today and that Johnson decides to delay the vote till Saturday. But we're supposed to get another vote reportedly immediately. Also, the Washington Post said today, if there is no elected speaker, House members cannot be sworn into office and the chamber cannot proceed with its business. That means that if there's no one in the seat of speaker by January 6th, the chamber will not be able to certify the results of the 2024 election for Donald Trump, a largely ceremonial but necessary step. However, the House could adopt a resolution naming a temporary speaker or caretaker of the House that would serve the chamber for limited purposes, such as certifying the results of the election. Also, the Post points out if there's no speaker by January 6th, the House not only risks delaying the certification of the 2024 election, but also delaying the implementation of Trump's program, Trump's agenda. The incoming Trump administration wants the GOP-led Congress to quickly pass policies addressing border security and energy-related reforms before working on reauthorizing Trump's 2017 tax law. More pressing for the House, however, is the debt ceiling. Failing to lift the debt limit could have catastrophic consequences for the global economy, as the U.S. government has never before defaulted on its debt obligations. Hardliners want Johnson to outline a plan for spending cuts in exchange for lifting the debt ceiling. Yes, as Wees and G's TV says, the members who just won their own election cannot be sworn in. Yes. Everybody is up for re-election every 2 years in the House. The members cannot be sworn in. They can't conduct business until there's a speaker. And this first vote is not final yet. People could change their votes. Okay, so Rachel Bade with Politico says that she believes that so Jake Sherman from Punchbowl News said this is an unusually long break between the end of voting and the announcement of the tally. And Rachel Bade of Politico thinks that this is a sign that Johnson thinks he can get the two non-Massey Republicans to switch their votes. Okay? So it's possible that the reason that, an obvious reason this vote has been not been announced closed yet is that Johnson, or other Republicans think they can get those two of those Republicans to switch. The artist Inspire thinks Johnson thinks he can get those two votes. Why would they switch? Maybe there's something they want from Johnson. Wow. I think I should add to this 218 needed because people are getting confused. There. Did Elon Musk put a post about this yet? That I have not seen. I will look. No, he has not posted about this vote. Trump, when I last checked, had not posted on True Social about this vote since it happened. We are bringing you live breaking news coverage. What is going to happen with the speaker vote in the House? How long will this go on for? Will Johnson eventually have support? Could he flip a couple votes now? Gay Ishuin says, hope he gets in to start this year. 10JK says, what a joke. Melanie Zanona with CNN says Johnson is currently in deep conversation on the House floor with Ralph Norman, who voted for somebody else. I unfortunately don't have access to the other cameras. This is the camera I have access to. I can only use the ones I have access to. Our viewer Ken Dude says time for bribes time. Well, maybe, they'll reach some kind of agreement where Johnson pledges to do X, Y, or Z. Jamie Dupree reports that Speaker Johnson has headed back to the cloakroom with about 6 to 8 Freedom Caucus members in tow. Wikipedia says in the U.S. Congress, cloakrooms are locations where members of Congress may interact outside the formal meeting rooms and are used by both the Senate and the House. The cloakrooms serve as a place for members to socialize, eat, and take naps without leaving the building. These rooms are closed to all except for senators, representatives, Senate pages, and a few of their trusted staffers, and may even have their own private phone numbers. As I mentioned, Jake Sherman with Punchbowl News said that this is an unusually long time between the votes and the announcement that the vote is over. Jeffries is the Democratic leader in the House. So Jeffries is not going to have enough votes to win because basically he got all the Democrats and none of the Republicans. Lizzie Maxfield says it took McCarthy 15 votes. Yes, in 2023, it took McCarthy 15 votes, Kevin McCarthy. Thank you to Captain Jerry Donnelly, who mentions January 9th is a national day of mourning for Jimmy Carter. Thank you, Captain Jerry Donnelly. There's a shot of the house. Hey, look, it's a different angle. It's a different angle. That's nice. We have a different angle there. Thanks to all of our... Oh, we're getting other angles. We're getting other shots now. Look at this. Guys, we got some other angles Reuters has. I like the other angles. There's Hakeem Jeffries at the bottom. Thanks to our moderators, we have Roberts Mayqueen on YouTube moderating right now. Beth Mythical, Danny James. I really appreciate it. Carms, Linda Belk and Larry on X. Over there on Twitch, we have Big Ball of Yarn here say, I got that fire, Sarah and Surly Dev. And on Facebook, we have Margaret Riley. Kayla Ribati has been over there. Thanks, Kay is there. Thank you. Thanks to all of our moderators. So I want to say it's been like a half hour since the voting stopped, but they haven't announced that the first vote is over. Maybe a couple of the Republicans will change their votes on this vote. There's Marjorie Taylor Greene right there. You just saw her walk by. Michael Best says the holdouts are being, quote, talked to. Yeah, this first vote is still not officially over. John Bresnahan with Punchbowl News says that the vote's still open and votes could be changed. Nathaniel Bates says, everyone go on X and look up what bills both speakers are behind on Grok and see who you align with. I think Nathaniel means both nominees, Jeffries and Johnson. Thank you, Nathaniel, for writing in. When will they close the vote? There's Marjorie Taylor Greene again. I can see her. AO says this break delay takes too long. Something happening? What's happening now? Something actually happening? I see some people talking up there at the front. It sort of looks like something's happening at the front. Maybe? Am I wrong? Oh, yes. As one of our viewers pointed out, Speaker Johnson was talking to Hakeem Jeffries. There's Speaker Johnson at the bottom right there. There's Speaker Johnson right there, down there. You can see him at the bottom. There he is. He's back in the chamber. Right at the bottom here. There he is. Tanked says, looks like Johnson is talking to someone. Did something happen? Breaking news. Jake Sherman says Norman and Self are changing their votes. Breaking news. Jake Sherman reports that Norman and Self are changing their votes to Johnson. So maybe Johnson will win on this vote. If Norman and Self change their votes, Johnson will win. Breaking news. Jake Sherman says Norman and Self appear to be changing their votes. There's Speaker Johnson on the left there. He is smiling. Maybe things are changing. Maybe things are changing. Guys. Again, Jake Sherman, who's a very good reporter, says Norman and Self appear to be changing their votes. Olivia Beavers says Norman and Self are standing by the desk. What's happening? Hold on, we have an announcement. We have an announcement. We have an announcement. What's going to be announced? Are they going to announce that Johnson wins?
Mr. Norman is recorded as Jordan.
Norman recorded as Jordan? Well, you need to switch to Johnson. Yeah, he originally voted for Jordan.
House will be in order.
Are they switching?
Mr. Norman, Johnson.
Johnson! That's it, he switched to Johnson. Norman switched to Johnson. Norman switched to Johnson. That means Johnson has 217. and other is 2.
Mr. Self is recorded as Donalds.
Is he going to switch?
Mr. Self, Johnson.
That's it. Johnson wins. Johnson wins. Johnson wins. Wow. Johnson wins. Johnson's going to get elected Speaker because Norman and Self both changed their votes. You just heard it. You just heard it. Johnson, Norman and Self, 2 Republicans, changed their votes. And Johnson is now going to win as Speaker because he has 218. Breaking news. Will we get some speeches now? You just saw it. No, those were not Democrats who switched. There were 3 Republicans who voted against Johnson, but 2 of them changed their vote to Johnson. So it looked like Johnson was not going to win on this first vote, but 2 Republicans have just switched their votes to Johnson, 2 of the 3 who voted against him. So he now has enough. So unless anybody changes their vote again, Johnson will be the Speaker again. Andrew Lawson says, so when do we find out what he gave up? Looks like they got it done. Looks like they got him enough votes. Oh, that's interesting. Akeem Idler mentioned to me that on C-SPAN, they were showing some other shots. Where is it here? Can I find this? Yeah. Annie Carney of the New York Times said on C-SPAN, I'm not allowed to steal the C-SPAN feed. C-SPAN was showing some different shots of the floor. Hold on, I'll say that after. Hold on, we're gonna have an announcement now. Announcement. I think they're going to make it official right now. Johnson elected Speaker.
The tellers agree in their tallies that the total number of votes cast is 434, of which the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana has received 218.
There you go. That's it.
The Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 215. And the Honorable Tom Emmer of the state of Minnesota has received 1. Therefore, the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 119th Congress.
There you go. There you go. Mike Johnson, elected Speaker. Again.
The clerk appoints the following committee to escort the Speaker-elect to the chair. The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise.
They're escorting
the gentleman
him to the
from
chair.
New York, Mr. Jeffries. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Emmer. The gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McLean. The gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Hudson. The gentleman from California, Mr. Liu. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Hearn. The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse. The gentleman from Utah, Mr. Moore. The gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Delbene. The gentlewoman from Indiana, Mrs. Houchin. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Morelli. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Reschenthaler. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. Dingle. And the members of the Louisiana delegation, Mr. Higgins, Ms. Letlow, Mr. Carter, and Mr. Fields. The committee will retire from the chamber to escort the Speaker-elect to the chair.
So they're going to a bunch of members are going to escort the Speaker to the chair. He was the previous Speaker, but he was just elected to be the Speaker of the new Congress, new House. So we'll watch that. So they did it on the first vote. It looked like he was not going to get elected on the first vote, but 2 Republicans changed their votes. And now we will watch what happens. Thanks to 10JK for your support. Appreciate you all being with us today. Our viewer ZZYGYY says, first vote doesn't look like chaos to me. I think there was a lot of thinking that this would go more than one vote. So they got all but one Republican to vote for him. Oh, I was going to mention Akeem Idler, our viewer, sent me something from Annie Carney with the New York Times. Annie Carney says that on C-SPAN they were showing a bunch of different like close-ups and different shots of people. And Annie Carney said that the party in control of the House decides what portions of the action that viewers can see and hear. But with no speaker, there's no party to set the rules, so C-SPAN can show what it wants, which was interesting. But once there's a party in charge, they can basically tell C-SPAN what they're allowed to show. Now, I can't just steal the C-SPAN feed, but on C-SPAN they were showing some other angles. So we're waiting for Johnson to be escorted to the podium. The New York Times says it's not clear yet why Norman and Self changed their votes, but they'll likely be swarmed by reporters to ask about this. So some of our viewers are talking about this too. Did Johnson say to the two Republicans who switched their votes, I will do X, Y, or Z? We don't know. We just know right now that they switched. AP says Mike Johnson reelected House Speaker after dramatic floor vote. The AP says Mike Johnson won re-election, pushing past GOP hard right holdouts and buoyed with a nod of support from President-elect Trump. Thank you so much, the Silver Sergeant. Silver Sergeant says, it's actually quite remarkable that only one vote was needed. AP says Johnson commands one of the slimmest majorities in modern times. It's 219 to 215 in the House right now. Republican to Democrat. Although when Matt Gaetz gets replaced in Florida, it'll be 220. I assume, I believe they're going to have a special election to replace him in Florida, and I would assume that a Republican will win his district. Bob says Trump probably spoke to the holdouts. It's our viewer, Bob, who said that. Van Landry, our viewer, says Trump has a lot of sway at the moment. Oh, Chip Roy actually posted, who was seen as a possible vote against Johnson, but he voted for Johnson. Chip Roy, really quick, I'll show you this. Chip Roy said, everything we do, Republican Congressman Chip Roy said, everything we do needs to set the Congress up for success and to deliver the Trump agenda for the American people. Speaker Johnson has not made that clear yet, so there are many members beyond the three who voted for someone else who have reservations. Let me show you this. There's that post from Chip Roy from 14 minutes ago. He did vote for Johnson, but he did say many members beyond the three who voted for someone else have reservations. Eric Chambers says Republicans, our viewer says Republicans came together. Reuters says Mike Johnson elected Speaker as Trump's Republicans unite behind him. Two Republicans switched their votes to support Johnson after more than a half an hour of negotiations. The vote was an early test of the party's ability to hang together as it advances Trump's agenda of tax cuts and border enforcement. It also tested Trump's clout on Capitol Hill, where a handful of Republicans have already shown a willingness to defy him, says Reuters. Reuters says Johnson will have a big job ahead. In addition to taking on Trump's sweeping legislative agenda, Congress will need to address the nation's debt ceiling later this year. With the federal government already more than $36 trillion in debt, many congressional Republicans are expected to demand significant spending cuts. Johnson angered some conservatives by repeatedly turning to Democrats to provide the votes to pass critical legislation. That's over the last couple of years, I believe it is. When exactly did Johnson become Speaker? He became Speaker in October of 2023. But Reuters says Johnson has angered some conservatives by repeatedly turning to Democrats to provide the votes to pass critical legislation, like bills to keep government agencies operating. I do not know if there was any kind of extra concession that Johnson made to get those two Republicans to switch their votes. We are waiting for Johnson to go to the podium. Laura Stone, our viewer, says, just keep printing more money. What does it matter at this point? Papa One, our viewer, says, yes, I'm sure there will be spending cuts. Wink, wink. Robert Dyer says, art of the deal. Ben C., our viewer, says we have a serious partisanship problem. Gay Issuin, our viewer, says, I am just glad this first step is over. Turned Off says Musk has more sway than Trump. Well, the Republicans have avoided a drawn-out fight over a speaker. The Watcher, our viewer, says, now we can get on with Trump agenda. All right, here we go.
Speaker-elect Mike Johnson from the state of Louisiana.
There he is, after being re-elected Speaker. And there's Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader. Storm Laughter, our viewer, says pomp and circumstance. Also, I think we're seeing Steve Scalise, House Majority Leader. There is Speaker Johnson. Oh, they're raising, look, they're raising up the podium. See that? They just raised it up. They can raise it and lower it.
Ready?
Here we go. Here we go. Hakeem Jeffries is speaking.
Speaker Johnson, Speaker Emerita Pelosi, it's great to see you back in the chamber. Whip Clark, Chairman Aguilar, thank you for your kind and generous words of nomination. To my colleagues in government, new members of Congress, families, friends, all those assembled. It's a high honor and a distinct privilege to welcome you to the People's House and the 119th Congress. The Bible teaches us in Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, 1st verse, that for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. It's fair to say that in a democracy, there's a time to campaign and a time to govern. The election is over. This is a new Congress. The American people need us as their elected representatives in this season to put down our partisan swords and pick up bipartisan plowshares. It's time for us to come together, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans, to get things done for the people. In that spirit, House Democrats will work hard to find bipartisan common ground with our Republican colleagues and the incoming administration on any issue, whenever and wherever possible, in order to make life better for everyday Americans. For far too long in this country, the cost of living has gone up, but the size of the middle class has come down. Housing costs are too high. Grocery costs are too high. Child care costs are too high. Insurance costs are too high. Utility costs are too high. America is too expensive. There are far too many people in this great country who for decades have been struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. That is not acceptable in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We need to build an affordable economy for hard-working American taxpayers, and we need to build it now. It's time for us to come together and finally lower the high cost of living in the United States of America once and for all. And we will work with anyone of any party to get that done. We will work with anyone to secure our borders, and we will work with anyone to fix our broken immigration system in a comprehensive and bipartisan manner. At the same period of time, we will push back against far-right extremism whenever necessary. So let me be clear. Social Security and Medicare are not entitlement programs. They are earned benefits. Hard-working American taxpayers pay in to Social Security and Medicare every day, every week, every month, every year throughout their entire adult life. They've earned those benefits, worked hard for those benefits, and deserve those benefits. So as Democrats, our promise to the American people is that we will fight hard to make sure that no one in this town takes away Social Security or Medicare from the American people. Not now, not ever, no means never. Our position is that it is not acceptable to cut Social Security, cut Medicare, cut Medicaid, cut veterans' benefits, or cut nutritional assistance from children and families in order to pay for massive tax breaks for billionaires and wealthy corporations. House Democrats will fight hard to protect working-class Americans and the things that matter to them, not the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. Keep your hands off Social Security and Medicare. Over the last 4 years, it's been a great honor for us to work alongside President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, whose administration rescued the economy from a once-in-a-century pandemic, delivered historic infrastructure investments, created more than 15 million good-paying jobs, enacted common-sense gun safety legislation for the first time in 30 years, provided life-sustaining health insurance to veterans suffering from toxic exposure, championed the largest investment in combating the climate crisis in the history of the world, which we will defend, and brought down the high price of life-saving prescription drugs for millions of Americans. Thank you, President Biden and Vice President Harris, for your powerful, principled, and purposeful public service. Thank you. Two months ago, the American people elected Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States of America. Thank you for that very generous applause. It's okay. There are no election deniers on our side of the aisle. You see, one should love America. One should love America when you win and when you lose. That's the patriotic thing to do, and that's the America that House Democrats will fight hard to preserve because we love this country. America is bigger than any one campaign, any one election, or any one individual. America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Let us never forget that our country is free, not simply because we are strong. America is strong because we are free. That freedom is now under assault. There are some in this country who apparently believe that the freedom of economic opportunity that made them wealthy should not apply to everyone else. Our message to that crowd is simple. Democrats will never abandon the long walk toward freedom. We will fight hard to defend the freedom of opportunity that makes the American dream possible. We will fight hard for the freedom to vote and to fight for a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We will fight for the freedom to organize and join a union of your choice. We will fight to defend the free enterprise system, but work hard to make sure that it actually works for working class Americans. And we will always defend a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. America promises one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's the America House Democrats will fight hard to preserve. God bless you. God bless the House of Representatives. May God continue to bless the United States of America. It is now my responsibility to present the gavel to the gentleman from the great state of Louisiana, the son of a firefighter, a God-fearing man, a husband, and a loving father of four, the 56th Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Leader Jeffries, all of our treasured colleagues here in the House. I'm grateful for this nomination. I'm grateful for this election, for the confidence this chamber has placed in me. It is the great honor of my life to serve this body with all of you. Of course, these are difficult days in our home state of Louisiana, where I come from. We all know about the terrorist attack in New Orleans, and it's really shaken our state. People are reeling from that attack. It took the lives of 14 innocent people, and it injured dozens more. And I wanted to begin appropriately today. If we could, I'd ask you all to join me in a moment of silence for the victims of this horrific act. Thank you. Thank you for that. I believe in giving honor where honor is due, and all of us do well to honor our spouses. My wife happens to be here this time. She didn't make it last time. It happened a little sudden. Kelly, would you stand up here in the gallery? Thank you. And we have our 4 children here, Hannah, Abby, Jack, and Will. Will you all stand up just really quickly? Come on. I wanted to do that. All of us recognize that there are no perks to being a congressman's kid, right? It's all sacrifice. And our spouses put up with so much, endless hours in travel and all the responsibilities on us. And we're good to remind them how important they are to us and how we could not do the job without them. And so it's appropriate for all of us to do that. Thank you, guys. This is a momentous time in the history of our nation. It really is. And as members of the 119th Congress, we are stewards of the great American Revolution that began almost exactly now 250 years ago, 1775 and 1776. It will fall at the time of this Congress, the great anniversary. And in these 2.5 centuries, we've been reminded repeatedly that freedom is never free. And we have stood tall as the greatest nation on the face of the earth. Without debate, we are the freest, the most powerful, most benevolent nation that has ever been in the history of the world. And it's not by happenstance. We're the ones who settled the West. We're the ones who ended slavery, who laid the transcontinental railroad, who gave women the right to vote, who won 2 world wars, who landed on the moon, and who won the Cold War. Throughout our history, we have done what no one thought was possible. And still, at 250 years old, our nation is actually a young nation. This past fall, I had opportunity to go to the G7 speakers meeting. It was held in Italy. It's the only international trip I took as speaker over the last 14 months because I didn't have time to do it, but it was a quick 3-day jaunt, and met with my colleagues, the speakers of the other parliaments, the great governments around the world. And we talked about that, how really special America is, how unique we are in our place on the globe, and how important it is for us to maintain that. And as I talked to these colleagues from around the world, I thought our closest allies, who recognize how important we are, how important this body, this House is, I thought about how is it that such a young country has become so exceptional, so singular in its importance, that today stands as the world's leader in liberty and the economy and culture. 100 years ago, President Calvin Coolidge answered that question in his inaugural address. It was March of 100 years ago, exactly almost. He said Coolidge, we best serve our own country. Address. It was March of 100 years ago, exactly almost. This, best serve our own country and most successfully discharge our obligations to humanity. I love that. Today, yeah, that's right. That's an applause line. Today, my friends, our nation is the envy of the world. Why? Because we have been marked by a spirit and a people who are explicitly that. We are explicitly American. We don't try to be like others. We recognize that a strong America is good for the entire world. And everybody around the globe knows that. That's right. We also recognize that the core principles that made America what we are must still be preserved today. The principles of American conservatism, but it's really the 7 core principles of the nation itself. Individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. These are the ingredients, the things that made us who we are. And in America, we know that human flourishing is best achieved by adherence to time-tested truths. We could list a number of those simple truths. Here's a couple. It's better to give a hand up than a hand out. That innovation thrives when bureaucracy dies. the simple truth that it is parents and administrators that must be in charge of their children's education. The path of prosperity has long been paved with policies that put America and Americans first. That is what we will champion. And the
Guys, I'm sorry about the audio. It's with the source. Hopefully they fix it. It's there's nothing I can do. Let me try to see. All right, hang on a second here. There's weirdness happening. Give me a second. Let me just see if I can fix it. That's obviously not ideal. All right, we have a problem here, which I need to fix. Oh, that's weird. Weirdness going on. All right, I gotta fix this. Hang on a moment. I will fix it. Everything just fell apart all in 1 second. All right, I'm resetting everything. Everything just stopped. So I really do apologize. In about 45 seconds, I should have everything back for you. That's rare that happens, but everything kind of just froze up on me. So I do apologize. But I will have that back on the screen in a second. Here we go. All right, we're back. I think we're back. Let's see. Hopefully. Man. All right, everything is really messed up. I'm sorry. This is obviously an issue here. Well, that was on my end. I'm just restarting something here, so I really apologize. I have no idea why that happened. Things happen once in a while. I'm resetting everything. I'm guessing it'll be fine once it's reset. I do apologize greatly. Everything was working fine. I didn't touch anything, and all of a sudden that happened. Again, just refreshing everything right now. As soon as it all pops up here. All right. I think we're good to go. Thanks for your patience. If you're still with us. That was really strange. Sorry, it's really annoying, but I just can't do anything to change it. So I'm going to just fix it and go from there. All right, here we go. There. All right, I'm seeing him. Hold on. I'm seeing him. You're going to hear him in a second. I'm really sorry about that.
We have to apply common sense. We have to stop the attacks on liquefied natural gas. Pass legislation to eliminate the Green New Deal, that funding. We're going to expedite new drilling permits. We're going to save the jobs of our auto manufacturers, and we're going to do that by ending the ridiculous EV mandates. And as heirs to the American Revolution and the descendants of patriots who defied tyranny, in the coming months, we are going to pass legislation to roll back the totalitarian fourth branch of government known as the administrative state. We're going to drastically cut back the size and scope of government. We're going to return the power back to the people. And in coordination with President Trump and his administration, we are going to create a leaner, faster, and more efficient federal workforce. We need to do that. Our people do not deserve to be ruled by millions of bureaucrats they've never voted for, never met, and can never hold accountable. They deserve a government that is led by those they've elected to lead. That is how Article 1 is supposed to work. That was the idea of the Congress, and we will return to that principle. The American people have called on us to reject business as usual and throw out the status quo. We must and we will heed their call. This is especially important as it comes to our nation's military. For too long, the Washington establishment has sought to appease and accommodate our nation's adversaries. They've tried to replace our military warriors with social justice warriors. It does not work. And while we're still the most powerful fighting force in the history of the world, by God's grace, the same establishment has eroded the capacities of our Army and Navy and diminished the readiness of our Air Force. We have to put an end to this madness. My friends and my colleagues, I think we should all unite in this idea. It is time now to reinstate fear in our enemies, refocus our mission on lethality, and realign our commitment to peace through strength right now. We have to prioritize the things that matter most. We have to make adequate investments in defense. This is the most dangerous moment since World War II, and everyone around the world is looking to America and looking to this body to ensure that we maintain the peace. What we're proposing now is just simply, as President Trump likes to say, a return to common sense. And he's exactly right. That message resonated across the country. I am very thankful, personally, that this body is filled with men and women who are committed to that change, to return to common sense. We can do this together. We should. It is our responsibility to do so. When I first took this gavel, many of you heard me say that I don't believe in luck or consequence. I believe in the idea of providence. And this morning, I participated with many of you early this morning in the 119th Congress Interfaith Prayer Service. It was held at St. Peter's Catholic Church. Many of you were there. It was an ecumenical service in a bipartisan service, which was great. My good friend Hakeem Jeffries began by a reading with the Old Testament. He read out of Deuteronomy 10. And then I was asked to provide a prayer for the nation. I offered one that is quite familiar to historians and probably many of us. It said right here in the program, it says right under my name, "It is said each day of his 8 years of the presidency and every day thereafter until his death, President Thomas Jefferson recited this prayer." I wanted to share it with you here at the end of my remarks, not as a prayer per se right now, but as a reminder of what our third president and the primary author of the Declaration of Independence thought was so important that it should be a daily recitation. Let me just read you that prayer. It goes like this. Thomas Jefferson's Prayer for the Nation, it's entitled. "Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech thee, that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of thy favor and glad to do thy will. Bless our land with honorable ministry, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties and fashion into one united people the multitude brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endow with thy spirit of wisdom those whom in thy name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to thy law we may show forth thy praise among the nations of the earth. In time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in the day of trouble, suffer not our trust in thee to fail, of which we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen." That was Thomas Jefferson's prayer. Yeah. Suffer not our trust in thee to fail. We will not fail. We cannot fail. We are all in this together. Our nation is counting on us to band together and solve these problems and get this done. I've said before that I believe God has elevated each one of you, that's just my belief, to your positions of leadership. And it's an act of providence that you've all been placed in your specific roles in this specific moment at this historic time, at the 250-year inflection point of the greatest nation in the history of the world. It is no small thing. We're also witnesses to the providence that spared our incoming president, President Trump, from the assassin's bullet, remarkable as that was, and to the new coalition of Americans that has risen from every creed, color, and cul-de-sac who want us to put America first. Our people are asking for a thriving economy and a rebuilt middle class and strong borders and a strong military, and we can deliver that. See, these objectives and these aims don't have an R or a D behind them. They have a USA. That's what we're about. In just a few moments, we're all going to take an oath. It is the same one oath for one nation and under the banner of one great American flag. This is an opportunity for us to protect our shared American heritage, to maintain the conditions needed for self-government, and to defend what Hakeem said earlier, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Working together, we have the potential to be one of the most consequential Congresses in the history of this great nation, so long as we work together, we do the right thing, and we put America first. As we think about all we've accomplished in the past 250 years, we can only imagine what life will be like 250 years from now. Whatever the future may look like, if we do our jobs now, we can help ensure that our civic virtues will endure, that this nation will still be an example to all the world for its greatness and its example of self-government, and that in spite of our great challenges and even our disagreements and our healthy debates, this extraordinary institution, the People's House, will still be standing strong. Thank you all so much, and God bless America.
Speaker Johnson.
So as the sequence of events requires, I am now ready to take the oath of office. I ask the Dean of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Harold Rogers of Kentucky, to administer the oath.
Mr. Speaker, number one, congratulations on your election. When our founding fathers...
Hold just a second, Dean. We don't have the microphone on yet.
Hello, test. Today we celebrate our shared American self-rule. When our founding fathers rejected calls for an American king and chose a bold and innovative government of self-rule, it was met by opposition, understandably, by the world's kings. They said, "You can't govern yourself. You need a king to direct the country." They said, "It's only a dream, self-rule." The founding fathers said, "You're right. It's the American dream." And thus our founders said that we should move on our own with our own leadership. The Speaker of the House is the critical protector and promoter of self-rule, the keeper of the dream, if you will. And we've elected this man from Louisiana to carry on our bold experiment in democracy and self-rule. So, sir, if you're ready to assume this awesome responsibility, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely, that you take this obligation without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you're about to enter. So help you God.
I do.
Congratulations, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. You may as well remain standing because according to precedent, the chair will swear in the members-elect en masse. The members-elect will all rise, and the chair will now administer the oath of office. Will you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter, so help you God. Congratulations, you are now members of the 119th Congress.
They just got officially sworn in, all the members. Remember, all the members get elected every 2 years. Every seat is up for election every 2 years. So they all just won an election. They couldn't swear them in until they had a speaker. Now they have a speaker. By the way, a quick thank you to Clay Bentonite and Kieran Wilson and Crazy Yoda and RB and Bebop and Rocksteady and the Silver Sergeant. Thank you. So it only took one vote to get Johnson elected Speaker. When do the cabinet hearings start? The Senate confirmation hearings? I had read an article saying they would start after next week. So maybe in not next week, but the week after. I had just read an article about this last night. I forget where. So if that article was correct, then the Senate would start the confirmation hearings not this coming week, but the next week. That would be in the Senate for Trump's nominees. But that's not firm. Oh, that's it. I think we lost the feed. I think that's the end of the feed. I think that's the end of the feed. Actually, I still have a feed. I still have a feed. Hold on a moment. I can show you a feed. Unless they just ended it. Hold on. Why is this not? Yeah, I do. I still have a feed. Hang on a moment. I don't know if they're doing anything. Let me show you what I have for you. Oh, hold on. I'm going to get some kind of, there's some sort of, I think, press announcement or something. What is this? I don't know if I'll have access to that. What is this here? There might be coming up some sort of briefing or something, or some sort of people from the House speaking. Let me just show you what I have right now. Hold on a moment, and then I'll see what else I can get for you. Here is what I have for you right now. There. There's still people there. Muted. Hey, I'm muted. Sorry. So what I was going to say is, at 4 p.m., I guess, according to B&O News, said this. Andrew Broadwater mentioned this to me, our viewer. That like in Vegas, they're supposed to do another update about the Cybertruck explosion at the Trump Hotel. I don't know of any new big things that have been reported about that. And also, I was thinking maybe they would say, because yesterday they did this press conference and they said, well, we think we know who the person was driving it, but we're not like absolutely 100% sure because we haven't got the DNA evidence back and stuff. So maybe they'd announce something about that. So I'm not going to do a separate stream for that, but maybe we'll just show it here. I haven't even, they didn't even, I don't even, things, I didn't even see that announced on their social media. I also didn't know if there was going to be any more stuff going on with this. Oh, no, yeah, yesterday the police actually, after the press conference yesterday in Vegas, they said the coroner officially identified the person who was driving that Cybertruck. It's weird, though, because I don't know why. It's strange that I'll have to ask B&O, because because they didn't post on their social media that there was going to be an update at 4. So I'm not sure where they got that news from. Hold on a second.
Order. The House come to order.
This is live.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan. Mrs. McClain.
Mr. Speaker, as chair of the Republican
Conference,
I am directed by that conference to notify the House officially that the Republican members have selected as Majority Leader the gentleman from Louisiana, the Honorable Mr. Steve Scalise.
Mr. Speaker, as the chairman of the Democratic caucus, I have been directed to report to the House that the Democratic members have selected as Minority Leader the gentleman from New York, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries.
Yay! The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McClain.
Mr. Speaker, as chair of the Republican Conference, I am directed by that conference to notify the House officially that the Republican members have elected as Majority Whip the gentleman from Minnesota, the Honorable Tom Emmer.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar.
Mr. Speaker, as the chairman of the Democratic caucus, I have been directed to report to the House that the Democratic members have selected as Minority Whip the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, the Honorable Catherine Clark.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McClain.
Mr. Speaker, I offer a privilege resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 1, resolved that Kevin McCumber of the state of Illinois be and is hereby chosen Clerk of the House of Representatives, that William McFarland of the state of Maryland be and is hereby chosen a Sergeant-at-Arms of the House of Representatives.
Hey, I'm still trying to figure, I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out if there is this press conference. Oh yeah, there is supposed to be one. Hey, you know what I'm going to do? Hey guys, I'm going to try to do this really quickly. I'm going to do another stream because Reuters just announced there's a Cybertruck briefing coming up. Really quick, I'm going to rush off the air right now so I can get another stream up to cover the Tesla Cybertruck explosion briefing in Vegas, okay? So I have to end this really quickly so I can get that stream up, okay? So come back in a couple minutes. Let me end this right now, but I'll be right back. Thank you to D's Ends, by the way, for your support. Thanks to all of our moderators. Thank you for watching. I'm coming right back with another stream. Just let me do this. Let me just go do that now, okay? So thanks for watching. I'm setting up another stream right now, and we'll be back in a couple minutes with the coverage of the Vegas Cybertruck press conference. Okay, so I'll see you in a couple minutes.